All right, our next speaker is Kim Crawley. She'll be dialing in on Zoom. And I'm sure many of us at this summit have read her work at some point or another. She's done a lot of cybersecurity writing and research for many organizations and outlets. Currently, she is conducting cybersecurity content for Hack the Box. She co-wrote the pen tester's blueprint, and today she's going to discuss, arguably one of the most important parts of the pen test, and that's the report. If you don't have a good report, a lot of the work that you did kind of doesn't matter.
So hello, everyone. My name is Kim Crawley, and thank you for the lovely introduction, by the way. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I'm known as a scribe in the industry. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I got control of the PowerPoint now. That's awesome. You gotta love remote networking. All right, so wow, I have written for so many corporate tech blogs over the years. I'm not going to be able to possibly name all of them, but some of the bigger names are AT&T Cybersecurity, BlackBerry Silence, Venafi, Sophos Naked Security. Now I currently run Hack the Box's blog, which launched in June. So as you know, Hack the Box is a major pen tester education platform, and they're a really cool company to work for. So I'm really happy to be on board with that. Last year, I co-wrote the Pen Tester Blueprint with Philip Wiley. If you're not aware, Phil is giving a talk tomorrow at this particular event about acquiring pen testing experience, and which is like a really, really hard struggle for a lot of people who are entering the industry. So I strongly recommend checking out Phil's talk tomorrow. And yeah, so I co-wrote the Pen Tester Blueprint with him. I wrote a book on my own this year, which is 8 Steps to Better Security, a simple cyber resilience guide for business. And that is not about pen testing specifically. It's more of a general cybersecurity book targeted to non-technical business people, because all the work that I've done through the other companies I worked for over the years, like AT&T and Sophos and all that, I was largely writing for a business market. I got to learn over the years how to communicate the importance of cybersecurity to business people, which is a very important skill, and which is something that you should be definitely doing with your report. So 8 Steps to Better Security is a guide for people who make business decisions, who don't know what the hell to do about cyber threats, and this is how you start. So yeah, I write a ton everywhere. I do lots and lots of writing. I love writing. Honestly, the spoken word and giving presentations like this is not my natural mode. I have given some talks over the years, besides Toronto and TASC, which is the Toronto Area Security Clutch, and different events like that. So when you write your pen testing report, you're writing it for 2 groups of people, essentially. You're writing them for cybersecurity professionals, and you're writing them for the suits. So one group is highly technical and should understand all of your technical jargon and understand the importance of taking care of all those technical details. The suits might just think, they don't like technical jargon usually, unless they run tech companies, and that's an exception. And yeah, they're primarily focused on just the business. A lot of them have MBA degrees and accounting degrees and stuff like that. So there are generally 2 different mindsets of people who are going to be reading your report. An NDA kind of protects me from giving any details of pen testing engagements I've had some involvement with over the years. I've never really been the main practitioner or pen tester in any of these engagements, but in the engagements I have been working on, my role was largely to sit down with the pen testers and help them write these reports. So yeah, because the thing is, you could find all kinds of like really scary information about the network that you're pen testing. And if you can't properly communicate what needs to be security hardened, how, and why it's important to do that security hardening, then all those weeks and possibly months and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars spent on a pen test, you might as well throw all that in the garbage, right? So there we go. So we're two groups of people that your pen test reports are going to be written for. The first group are going to be any cybersecurity staff within the organization, blue team if they have one, because they're going to be focused on the security hardening. And these are the things that they generally care about. So they care about software vulnerabilities and how to patch and mitigate them. They, of course, care about physical vulnerabilities in rooms and buildings and how to mitigate those. They care about cloud implementation vulnerabilities and how to mitigate them. They definitely care about social engineering vulnerabilities and whatever employee training might be needed. You know, I think all of us here realize that the majority of cyber attacks involve social engineering at one point or another, because I think it was Bruce Schneier who said it's much easier. I'm not going to quote him very well, but I think he said something to the effect of amateurs hack systems, professionals hack human beings. I'm really, really doing a bad job of quoting someone, but you know what I mean. So they also care about compliance with data privacy and other cybersecurity regulations. And every single organization that you're going to be pen testing for is going to have at least some regulations that they must comply with. So that's very important, definitely. They care about the incident response plan and CSIRT effectiveness, definitely. They care about both external and internal cyber threats and how to manage them. That should be the prior focus of the blue team, of course. And anyone working IT, even if they're not cybersecurity focused, are going to care about good network performance metrics and baselines. And obviously, cyber attacks would impede with meeting those metric targets and baselines. So giving information in your report that can help the cybersecurity team in whatever role they happen to be fulfill these objectives, they're going to want to know. And you're going to help them by giving them as many details as you possibly can about what happened when you simulated those cyber attacks on their network. So now the suits, now there are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, this is what they care about. They care about money. They care, that's their main focus. There are some, obviously, focusing on generalities too much can be dangerous. There are some corporate executives who care about things other than money. I definitely like the founder and CEO of Hack the Box, Horace Pilarinos. I'm sorry, boss, I'm going to mispronounce your name. Horace Pilarinos. Like everyone who runs my company, they all have pen testing backgrounds. So if you write a pen test report for them and you give them great technical detail and you explain that these are very, critical vulnerabilities that have been shown to be impacting the network and could very likely be exploited, they're going to care just based on that. But, if your C-suite are mainly non-technical people in non-technical industries, what they're going to focus on is the money part. You could say to them, our network is really susceptible to a major data breach that could expose the millions of financial records on our internal servers. And, some executives might go, okay, whatever. I had steak for lunch. Let me tell you about that. But then if you tell them, if you have millions of customer records data breached, this is going to cost our organization millions of dollars. All of a sudden, their ears will perk up. So always mention dollar figures somewhere in your pen test report about how much money can be lost to the organization through successful cyber exploits of any kind. It might be very difficult to calculate, exactly how much a particular cyber attack is going to cost the company. If you have difficulty coming up with figures based on the particulars of the network that you're testing, what I would recommend is you go out there and you look for general research. Some of my favorite research reports, when it comes to data breaches, I love the IBM state of the data, I think it's called the IBM something data breach report or state of the data breach report. And I'm going to flub a lot of things, so thanks for your patience. There are some really great facts and figures in that annual IBM report, like a lot of data breaches, according to the country and the industry, could cost $3 million or more per incident. I think the average data breach that they studied in the United States for 2020 cost an organization a total of over $8 million. So if you can't find facts and figures based on your particular network, think of the size of your organization, think of the industry that your organization is in, and think about where in the world your organization operates. You're going to be able to find, really solid research data from organizations like IBM, Sophos, you name it. So just like go online and find those reports and get your facts and figures from there. So as I said, reports are for both the nerds and the suits. So however long your pen test report is going to be, the nerds will read the entire report. That's their job. They want to know in detail which actions were performed in the pen test. They want to know which vulnerabilities were exploited, how, and what the specific outcomes were. And my advice is write as many pages as you need to give them all of the actionable technical details. I've seen pen test reports that were 30 pages long. I've seen ones that were like a little over 100 pages long if the engagement has gone on for over a month or more. Just as long as you don't repeat things too often, use as many pages, as many words as you possibly need to share every important detail. Now, the suits will only care about if cyber attacks are possible and only if they'll cost the business lots of money. So, as I said, unless they are technical corporate executives, that's generally all they really care about. And they'll only read 1 or 2 pages of executive summary, which is why the executive summary goes at the front of your report. And I'm going to drive this point home multiple times during my talk. Cite money numbers of potential monetary losses from cyber threats as much as applicable. And I would even go as far as to bold, italicize, underline the money figures. So yeah, grab their attention. So this is the anatomy of a pen test report. So as I said, you start with an executive summary. So that should be the first 1 or 2 pages. Make this 2 pages tops because C-suite people are busy, and they're not generally going to have the patience to read the entire report. So make sure all the information that you need them to know is summed up in 1 or 2 pages. So as I said, it's the too long didn't read for the suits. Unless the executives are technical people, avoid overly technical language. Emphasize potential costs of cyber threats the network is vulnerable to in money numbers. I'm really driving that point home, eh? Data breach research, as I mentioned, there are organizations that do really great research like IBM and Sophos and other orgs, and their reports are freely available online. Find their reports and cite figures from their reports if you can't find any data specific to your company. And as I said, the rest of the report is for the nerds. So keep the executive summary brief, 1 or 2 pages, and then the rest of the report literally use as many pages as you need. So then the next section could go by many different names, maybe methodology or whatever you want. But basically the following section is an explanation of all the actions you performed during the pen test in as much detail as possible. Really, you cannot get too detailed or too specific, because as pen testers, you should understand that any little technicality of your simulated cyber exploit could affect the outcome of it. So go get into great detail now, because now you're talking to the nerds. And also, like, talk about what kind of cyber attacker you were simulating. Were they internal? Were they external? Were they script kiddies? Were they some sort of advanced persistent threat? Because obviously you're performing a pen test, you are basically playing a cyber attacker. So that cyber attacker is going to have a particular background, internal or external to your network, and a differing level of technological sophistication. That's all relevant to your report. So the next, so I would say if you exploited any particular vulnerabilities which are known and there are CVEs for, mention the specific CVEs when applicable, definitely. And then the following section should be remediation advice. You can call it whatever you want, but it's remediation advice. You can just call it remediation. So what's really important in this section is to triage cyber risks according to a risk rating system. And the one that our industry has generally accepted now is the NIST SP 830. So definitely when it comes to technical standards, stick with the most popular one if possible. And it's a really great risk rating system. And with that standard, you can triage like, these are the threats that are the most likely to happen and will cause the most monetary damage to the network. And then triaged all the way to least critical, which is, this is unlikely to be exploited, but if it is, it's not going to cost the organization a lot of money. So yeah, use that system, because obviously the blue team or whoever the defensive cybersecurity pros are not going to be able to address all of the vulnerabilities ASAP. There might not be a budget or the infrastructure or the resources to address all of them, especially not right away. So knowing which ones are more important to address sooner is really, really important here, and give as much detail as possible. And then the final section is the conclusion. And to be completely honest with you, in my opinion, the conclusion is the least important part of the report by far. You've caught the executive's attention as to why this is important with the executive summary. You've given the methodological, I'm going to mispronounce that. You've given information about the methodology and all the details of your tests and what the results were and all the remediation advice in the meat of the report, which should be about at least 90% of the report is the technical information for the suits. So honestly, the conclusion isn't really important at all. If you write a conclusion, it should be like the executive summary, but one in which you're allowed to get a little more technical than in the executive summary. So I've got some tips here from my experience working with pen test reports. So if you're working with more than one pen tester on your engagement, designate one tester who is the better written communicator to write the report. I have met technical people and hackers who are absolutely brilliant creative writers who express themselves in writing beautifully, and others who may be absolutely brilliant but are terrible when it comes to communicating their ideas in writing. You should hopefully know which person on your team has the better creative writing skill, so designate that to that particular person. So as I said, the report can be however long it needs to be. I haven't really seen too many reports that were over 100 pages, but yeah, don't limit your word count if there are important details that need to be included, because the group that might not want to read the entire report is just going to read the 1 or 2 page executive summary. So as I mentioned over and over again, the executive summary right at the beginning of the report, 1 or 2 pages. And now I seldom see, yeah, so the money point here. So as I said, I seldom see this in pen test reports, but the executive summary should mention potential expenses of successful cyber attacks at least a few times. Wow, have you guys been drinking something every time I've mentioned money numbers? Bold, maybe bold and underlined, grab their attention. And yeah, like use phrases like network downtime from this attack will cost our org $1 to $2 million in lost revenue per hour, or the European Union through the GDPR can fine our org 8 to 10 million euros for a breach that this exploit would cause if we don't publicly report it in 2 days. You can get these facts and figures by doing enough research online if you need to. Put those money numbers in to show these, because the executives, they are the gatekeepers to the budget. They hold the purse strings. One thing that I hear from cybersecurity professionals all the time is the company that they're working for did not prioritize or budget for cybersecurity adequately until they got their first major crippling ransomware attack, or until they had their first major super expensive data breach. And all of a sudden, the cybersecurity budget, went up 10 times. That's really sad that so many organizations only spend sufficient money on cybersecurity once they've already had a really expensive cyber attack. So yeah, one thing I really want to drive home is, as a pen tester, you're going to be pen testing orgs that have like at least medium level security maturity, if not high level security maturity. So they will have cybersecurity professionals working internally. In the pen test report, your job is to make their jobs easier. A higher security maturity organization will probably have a CISO. Think of it as you are making the CISO's job easier to persuade the non-technical executives that they should be spending money on people and technology and anything else related to security hardening. Any blue teamers, defensive security specialists, the CISO, the CTO, the CIO, in this pen test report, you are giving them a way to explain to the CEO and the CFO, this is why we should be spending money, and this is how we should be spending the money to security harden. So you are helping these people out. You should focus on that. So I've got some more tips here. So for readability, pages should be formatted to have no more than 500 words per page. Like people don't want to read like 2,000 words on a page and like squint and like zoom in and all that. So keep it to no more than 500 words per page. Your pen test report, chances are, is either going to be a PDF or it's going to be a Microsoft Word document, but probably a PDF. So you can just think of them as like printed sheets of paper. I would say, as a general rule, to keep people's attention while they're reading, no more than 6 sentences per paragraph. Paragraphs should have a blank line between them. Whenever it's possibly appropriate, feel free to put in bullet lists, illustrations, diagrams, charts, screenshots, because that will help keep people's attention, even if they are highly technical. No one wants to read a wall of text. Absolutely no one. And use like a nice readable font like Arial or Times New Roman. Don't use like Comic Sans or Papyrus. Make something that's easy to read, easy on the eyes. And as I mentioned in the technical part of the report, if it's relevant to mention a specific CVE or a specific exploit that's been researched, or a particular cybercrime group or strain of malware, there's going to be web pages about it. Fortunately, both the PDF and Microsoft Word formats support hyperlinks. Take full advantage of that feature. Link to web pages about it so that they can have further context for what you were exploiting. Yeah, definitely feature risk ratings based on, I would recommend the NIST SP 830, detailed step-in-step instructions. That's for remediation, how to remediate these vulnerabilities, and mention potential financial impacts in the remediation part of the report as well. Because ultimately, money-making businesses, it all boils down to money in the end. So I'm going to take full advantage of having your time for just another couple of minutes to mention the books that I have written, which can be purchased in paperback and ebook and audiobook formats anywhere where fine books about computers and stuff are sold. The Pen Tester Blueprint, I co-wrote with Phil Wiley, and it's a guide to pen testing careers. And 8 Steps to Better Security is a general cybersecurity guide for non-technical business people, which might also help you explain cybersecurity concepts to non-technical business people. So there you go. That's it. I'm done. And feel free to toss me any questions for the, I believe, couple of minutes I have left.